Hello, hello, welcome to the show. Welcome to Not Just Nintendo, a video game podcast that is about Nintendo. But it's not just Nintendo here at Not Just Nintendo, as I talk about all things video games. That's actually a totally different intro that I've never done before, but now I'm doing it. I don't know if I'm going to do it consistently or just this once or what's going on, but who knows? Am I right? I am, I know, I'm always right. Anyways, this is episode 15. 15, that's a pretty good number. That's I don't know. That's a number right there. That is a number. It's numbering things. It's anyways. Hello everyone. Today that you're seeing this is May 28th, which means that we have 8 days until the Switch 2 releases and the 10th generation, the 10th gen begins. The 10th gen begins. I'm recording this on Tuesday, or at least this first part. I don't think I'm going to do it all today. And yesterday, on Monday, on the 26th, I was able to say that there were 10 days until Gen 10, and that was very exciting for me. Now there are only 8 days till Gen 10. So that's pretty fun. It's exciting. It's all that wonderful, wonderful jazz. Hello. 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 I've already said hello, like a bunch of times, but I'll say it again. I'm a little out of my mind, as per always. Today I am, once again, I know this is nothing new. I was sick, what was it, like episode 10 or episode 11? It was only a few weeks ago. I was sick with an illness. I was ill. I was sick. Anyways. And I am once again sick. So this is just becoming a thing. It's weird because I'm not someone who's frequently been sick, historically speaking. But for some reason, in the last year, I've been sick a lot. So I don't know what's happened there. Maybe I'm slowly dying, but we all are. So it is what it is. But I'm sick again. I'm very sick. It's not as bad as it was last time. I don't think this will have to be a shorter episode or anything. It may still be, if I run out of things to talk about. But knowing me. I'll just yap about a bunch of random stuff and not talk about anything important. And yeah, I guess I'm not advertising myself very well. But speaking of advertising myself, I did actually finally go ahead. I've been a little lazy for the last 15 weeks. just the last 15. Before that, I was like super productive, right? Always on top of things. But in the last 15 weeks, I've been very lazy, and I have not put the show out on anything besides YouTube and Spotify. And I've finally done that. I've put it out on Amazon Music, Amazon whatever podcast, whatever it's called. Put it out there, and I think it's on iHeartRadio. But it's a little confusing because I think the link that is attached to the Spotify show for iHeartRadio is actually the wrong link, and I can't figure out how to change it. But the show is actually there, and it is up to date. But if you follow the link that's in the Spotify, you'll get the wrong thing. It's not. It's wrong. It's the wrong thing. So don't go through there. Just look it up. If you're planning to watch on iHeartRadio, which I can't imagine a ton of people are, but maybe there's somebody out there. And if you're planning to do that, then just look it up. Don't go through any links or anything. Just look it up because you'll actually get the right stuff that way. But as far as I know, the show should be up to date. I might not be on Apple Music. It said it could take up to 2 or 3 days, so maybe it'll take a couple days. Who knows? But maybe it's already there. Actually, I haven't checked since earlier today. I haven't checked. It's been a few hours since I've last checked, so I'm not sure. It may actually be up. I guess I forgot to mention, I did say that I was sick, but the reason I brought it up in the first place is because I know I might sound a little off. I think I do sound a little off, a little congested. My voice is a little deeper, which makes me sound super cool. Not that I'm not already super cool. No, I'm kidding. But anyways, so I might sound a little off. I apologize. Although to be fair, it's not like I can really do anything about it. So I'm just kind of going with the flow, just kind of dealing with it. Just yeah, it looks like it is not currently up on Amazon, but that's okay. It'll probably be up at least probably by the time this comes out. If not, it'll be Thursday, Friday, who knows, something like that. But it'll be pretty soon. I'm assuming. I guess I don't know that for sure, but I was trying to get it on something else too, and I already forgot what that was called. I don't really know. I'm not up with it. Oh, Pocket Cast. I was trying to get it on Pocket Cast, and I'm not entirely sure if it worked. So it might be on there. It might not. Who knows? I'll probably look into it later today or tomorrow or something. Also, I guess since I'm here looking at the Spotify dashboard, I can mention that you can email the show at notjustnintendo@gmail.com. That is NOTJUSTNINTENDO at gmail.com. You can also, if you're on YouTube or if you're on Spotify, because now there's other places, but if you're on YouTube or Spotify, you can comment on the show. I don't think iHeartRadio or Amazon have comments, and if they do, don't comment there. I probably won't see it. Um, I'll look into that actually because maybe I should be checking there. I don't know. I'm not guessing that I'm gonna get a lot of plays over there, but who knows? I'm not getting plays really on Spotify either. It's only coming from YouTube at the moment. But I figure the more places I am, the more possibility there is that somebody sees it. So that's the plan. But yes, you can email the show any questions, any comments, any things you want me to answer. Although that's the same as just a question, so I don't know why I had to say that twice. Anything like that and also any well that's really it, but you can also, rather than email, if you so choose, you can comment on Spotify, you can comment on YouTube, and like I said, I don't think you can comment anywhere else. I don't think it works anywhere else. I don't think it even like I don't think that's a feature on Amazon, but I don't use Amazon, so who knows. It could be. I guess somebody probably knows, but not me. I'm not the guy. So unlike the last few weeks, I did actually beat a video game this week, and I will talk about that later. But I'm thinking I actually want to talk about something else, and that is that for the last, I don't know, probably 9 or 10 weeks, like pretty close to the beginning of the show, I would say. It's been a couple months, I think. For that last period of time, which I'm not entirely sure on, I have been talking about how I have a video game collection. I've been filing it on a Google spreadsheet. So I've been, listing off all the games with the information, the developers, the publishers, the years, the, status I have them in, whether it's loose, complete, new, whatever it is. I've been, you know, putting all that stuff in a spreadsheet. Um, Partially just so I know what I have, partially because I was really interested in how many games I had, partially to have that information in case I ever need it, and also because I felt like I should have a good organization system, because I wanted to make this video where I do a tour of the collection in July. I don't know exactly when that's happening. Probably third week of July, fourth week of July, somewhere in there. Later in July, I'm guessing, but who knows? It's probably just whenever I get around to it, if I'm being honest. Um, so, but yes, that's still the plan, and so I've been really trying to get things together for that. I've actually, I think this is since the last week too. I did finally finish filing the collection. That's why I'm bringing it up. I finally got all of my Xbox games in. So the tallies on the Xbox games, I don't know if I actually went through how many games I have for each console. I guess I can talk about that real quick because I think it's actually kind of interesting. Maybe you guys disagree. Personally, I think it's interesting, like the 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 makeup of like exactly where these games are. So I'll first say that I have calculated my total. My total video game collection. I have 559 games. That's a little less than I thought, to be honest. I kind of figured I'd be somewhere in the 570, 580 range, but I knew I was between 550 and 600. So that's not shocking to me. But that is good to know the number because now every time I get a game, I can like, add that to that number until I hit like 600, and then I can like make a big deal out of 600 because that'll be a fun milestone. So I'll just quickly run through these. On NES, I have 33 games. They're all loose besides one. I have one complete with the box and manual. I have 7 Famicom games as well. Those are all just the loose cart. And some of these I have duplicates of. So, like, I have a couple duplicates for the NES, a couple duplicates for the Famicom, but those aren't counted as a separate game. It's just, a number. For Super Nintendo, I have 37. So that is basically all loose besides 3. I have 3 games that are complete. Or actually, I think one's in box, and then the other 2 are complete. And for a couple of those, I think it's NFL Quarterback Club and Wheel of Fortune, or actually not Wheel of Fortune, Side Pocket. I have them both loose and complete. So I have duplicates in different statuses. I have one PAL SNES game from Europe. I have two Super Famicom games from Japan. I have 13 64 games, all loose. I don't really have many of these because I've kind of considered trying to get a lot of them in box. So I don't want to buy a ton of 64 games if I'm going to end up getting them in box because I don't want to have to buy them twice. I have one Japanese 64 game, 11 GameCube games because they're expensive. I don't tend to buy a ton of those. This is one of my bigger collections, 61 Wii games, 28 Wii U games. And I should say for Wii and Wii U, just about all of them are complete. And GameCube, just about all of them are complete. For Switch, they're all complete. I don't have any loose Switch games. I have 43 Switch games. On Game Boy, I have 5. They're all loose. Game Boy Advance, I have 8. They're all loose. For DS, I have 24, and some of those are loose, and some of those are complete, and a couple of them are just in box. So there's a bit of a range there. I actually have one DS game from France, so it's a PAL game. 3DS, I have 22. Again, many of them loose, many of them complete, a couple of them just in box, missing the manual. That's all the Nintendo stuff. Then there's the Sega Master System, for which I have 2 games, both complete in box. For the Genesis, I have 18. Again, some of them in box, some of them complete, some of them loose. Sega Saturn, I have 2 games. They're both the sleeved games, so they don't come in those big plastic cases. They just come in the little sleeves, kind of like Wii Sports. For the Dreamcast, I have 2 complete games. For the Game Gear, I have 5 loose games. That's all the Sega stuff. PS1, I have 7. Most of them are complete. I have 1 loose. PS2, I have 10, and they're all complete. I don't have any loose of those. PSP, I have 4. 2 of them are complete, and 2 of them are loose. PS3, I have 7. They're all complete. PS4, I have 10. They're all complete. PS5, I have 8. They're all complete. That's all the PlayStation. And finally, the Xbox that I just did yesterday. I have 30 original Xbox games, about half of them loose and about half of them in cases, most of those being with the manual, some of them not. Xbox 360, I have 32, and similar deal there, about half of them are loose, half of them are complete, and I have 2 sealed games on 360. Xbox One, I have 11, they're all complete. Xbox Series, I have 3, and they're complete. This is my biggest collection by quite a bit. Atari 2600, I have um, 86 games, and most of them are loose. I do have about I have 1 complete. I have 2 in box, and then I have about 5 of them sealed. I have 5 sealed Atari 2600 games. Atari 5200, I have 2 loose games. Atari 7800, I only have 1 loose game. In television, I have 7. 3 are in box, 4 are without. Magnavox Odyssey 2, I have 14. Most of them are complete. I have 1 loose. ColecoVision, I have 2. And that's all of the games that I have. They're all filed. They all have their information there. And those all total up to 559. So again, my biggest collections are Atari 2600 with 86, the Wii with 61, and then the Switch with 43. Those are my 3 biggest. So if you didn't care about that at all, I'm sorry, but I thought it was kind of interesting just to give a little breakdown, because again, I don't know, I think it's interesting. I also, in regards to the collection, I have toted up all of the pop figures. I've been talking about the pop figures on these shelves that have been taking up some space. I toted them all up, so now I have more room to put video games and stuff on the shelves. I have not filled in most of that space just yet. Still thinking about what exactly I'm going to do, but I'm definitely going to spread some things out better. I'm going to pull out some broken consoles and some duplicate consoles that I have like stored in totes. I'm going to break out some of those and put them on shelves. I have a 3D printer, so maybe I'll 3D print some display stands for controllers and things, a bunch of variety of some memorabilia that I might put out on some of these extra shelves. Kind of pretty it up, for the collection tour. And also just because it's kind of nice to look around and have filled shelves with really cool things. But I guess that kind of does it for all my like little preamble, all talking about the collection. Because like I said, I have not filled in those shelves, for the most part. I've slid a few things over to be more spaced out, but I haven't really put anything proper on the shelves. So I will be getting around to doing that in the next, week. Hopefully, we'll see what happens. And I don't think it's really that particularly busy a week. I think next week is going to be pretty busy, but this week will be pretty free, so hopefully I'll be able to do some of that. But we'll see what happens. Maybe I'll come up with something else to do. But I think that's going to end my little preamble discussion here. We're going to get into some news and some stuff that's happened in the last week. A lot of it was just in the last day or two. And then finally, at the end of the show, I will talk about the video game that I beat in the last week because I've finally gotten back to playing some video games. Not as many as I would have liked. I've been kind of reading a bunch of books, believe it or not. I hadn't been reading books for a number of years, and I've been in the groove of reading a bunch of comic books and graphic novels, many of which are old, and also some regular books, novels, and history things. And I've been into reading and stuff, so that's been taking up some time. Um, but I don't know. I've been trying to balance some things, and it's definitely been more reading lately. But I'd like to get back to some more games here in the next week. So we'll see what happens. But yes, I will take a quick music break, and then I'll be back to talk about some news and some things. So we are back. Let's get into a little bit of gaming news from the last week. Of course, a lot of it's actually from the last couple days. Um, but when I was looking for news, the first headline that I saw, this was yesterday, was about Apple. So of course, Apple, they have purchased a game development studio. If you can count it that, it was a mobile game. RAC7. It's a very catchy name, as it turns out. They were behind Sneaky Sasquatch, Dark Echo, and Splitter Critters. They were the people that these were Apple Arcade exclusives. Um, and I think they haven't made anything in a few years, but Apple has bought them, and of course, this has sparked a lot of controversy, I suppose. Some people saying that they're going to become involved in the game space, and a lot of people don't want that. And there's other people, and Apple themselves even said that they're not planning to get involved in the game space, and they're not planning to purchase any more studios. Personally, I'm in the camp that they probably will at some point continue to get involved. I don't think this inherently is a problem, them buying some studios, but at the same time, I am a little concerned about Apple's involvement. I don't know. We'll see what happens. I know with some of the big tech companies getting involved, oftentimes it doesn't seem to work out very well for the space. Like we have Amazon, they tried to get involved with the Amazon Luna stuff, and they're actually very much still around. They're not particularly popular, but they're still around. And they have their like streaming service, not streaming service. Well, yeah, I guess it is. It's a game streaming service. They have that, and like I said, I don't think it's very popular. It apparently doesn't work all that well because streaming video games still doesn't work well, and it may never. But there are definitely people out there who just do not care about those performance things, and maybe they don't even notice. So there are people out there that are totally fine with streaming games over a service like Amazon Luna or like Google Stadia. Google Stadia is now shut down. But yes, in both of those instances, there were streaming services for video games that both haven't really done super well. Google Stadia's did so poorly that it's gone. And Amazon Luna is also not, I don't think, doing too well, but it is still around, so at least there's that. There's been other things of the sort, but I think with the big companies as well, you've got like Microsoft and Sony. Obviously, are both very large companies that are very, very involved in video games, of course. And it's worked out well for both of them. I would say it's worked out better for Sony, but I mean, not I'm not saying Microsoft's like not doing well. They're doing well enough. If they were doing too poorly, they would have been gone years ago. But I am a little bit concerned about the future of Microsoft in the game space. I know I've talked about it a lot before, and I'm sure I'll continue to talk about it ad nauseum. But for now, I just think this whole Apple situation, them buying RAC7, it's not really crazy. Like nothing's like insane here. Like it's not. This isn't going to have ramifications on anything else really, other than maybe Apple Arcade. Maybe Apple Arcade will get more games. We'll see. I don't know. I mean, I don't really care. I don't have Apple Arcade. I don't even have an Apple device. So it doesn't matter to me, and I think it doesn't really matter to the industry at large. But I'm not sure, but I'm guessing that they will probably continue to get involved, and they will probably purchase other companies that may have more ramifications on the rest of the industry. So this is something we should watch. It may end up being a problem, or it may end up being influential in some way, but at the moment, it's not any of those things. Also, we finally got the release date for Dragon Quest 1 and 2, the HD 2D remakes. Last year, we had Dragon Quest 3, the HD 2D remake, that came out on PS5, Switch, and Xbox. I think it was on Xbox. So it came out there, and I've talked about this a few times before, but I've found it weird that they would put out Dragon Quest 3 before they put out Dragon Quest 1 and 2, but they did for some reason. So they put out Dragon Quest 3, and then a couple months later at the Game Awards last year, we found out about the Dragon Quest 1 and 2 remakes. And then those were announced for Switch 2 back in April. So there's been a number of things that have happened in regards to that. I've definitely been keeping an eye on this because I've been curious about, when this is coming out. I'm kind of thinking of getting it. We'll have to see what happens, but it has finally got a release date. It is October 30th, which is about the same time the last one came out. It might have been earlier October, but it was definitely in October. So it kind of seems like that's going to be their slot. And if they, put out like a Dragon Quest 4 remastered or something like that, then they may just take the same slot. We'll see. I don't know. I mean, who knows, right? But yes, apparently they have dropped pre-orders for this. You can go pre-order it. It's like $60 everywhere. So it's not like a full price game, but it's pretty close. I will say that there is a collector's edition that is $150, which is just ridiculous. I don't even know what all is in there, to be honest. I hope, $150 worth of stuff, because like, man, that is steep. Like that is really steep. The other big news with this is that it is coming to Switch 2 at launch is the big news, I think, because of course we have known that Switch 2 is going to get some of the third party support and that a lot of this stuff is going to come out, but we weren't entirely sure still if things were going to come out day and date, and it looks like at least in a few examples now things are coming out day and date, which is great because that's definitely what you want to see. It's definitely good for Nintendo. It's good for the consumers. It's just generally a good thing when things come out at the same time. Usually, those timed exclusives and those kind of things can cause some problems. Just I guess depending on who is getting the exclusive, right? I mean, if if Xbox gets a timed exclusive, then it's good for them, but it's bad for everything else. Everybody else. You see what I'm saying? So I'm not actually too surprised that Dragon Quest 1 and 2 are coming out day and date. Some people were pretty surprised. I would have expected this, but it is definitely good to have that confirmation now that it is in fact coming day and date. There's also this Elden Ring Night Rain, sorry, which is coming out in just a couple days, I think, like May 30th, I want to say. So like this Friday. So it's coming out very soon. Personally, I have like literally zero interest in this, but it's definitely interesting. I will say there's one appealing thing for me about it, and that's that it only costs like $40. It is like a multiplayer thing though, and I don't do a lot of multiplayer stuff. I don't really have people to play multiplayer stuff with, and I also really don't like what I've played of Elden Ring, so I'm not terribly interested in this. But I think it is kind of intriguing that it's only $40. I think there might be there's a deluxe edition which is 55. So really, at the end of the day, I imagine there will be a lot of stuff missing from the main edition. That's how it seems to go with a lot of these third-party things. They'll put out like a regular edition of the game, but they're actually just missing a bunch of stuff. And then the real edition of the game, the gold or the galactic or the ultimate or the deluxe or whatever they want to call it, is usually like pretty darn expensive. And they try to kind of hide behind their high price tag by having a lower one. However, I can't complain too much in this instance because even their deluxe edition is still pretty cheap at $55. I mean, that's still cheaper than just about every game that comes out. So that's actually still pretty respectable. They, of course, also have a collector's edition, which is $200, which, again, I mean, that's like absurd. That's crazy. I don't know who would ever. I'm sure there are a couple people out there, but I am definitely not somebody who would spend $200 for a collector's edition of probably anything, but definitely not a game like this game. But it is big news though that this game is coming out, and I just figured I should at least mention it, even if I'm personally not too interested. I'm pretty sure though that this is not coming out on Switch 2, or at least not just yet. As far as we know, I think it's only going to come out on PS5 and Series X and PC. So honestly, it probably will come to Switch 2 later on, but I don't know. I don't know yet. We'll see. There's also a new Shinobi game coming out. I hadn't heard about this at all. I think this was just announced like yesterday or 2 days ago or something. This is coming out on August 29th, and apparently it's coming to Switch 1. I don't know if it's coming to Switch 2, actually. It probably is. I don't know. This is just saying Switch 1. But apparently they're making a new Shinobi game. I don't actually know. When was the last Shinobi game? I know personally I've only played one Shinobi game and not all the way through. Um, I think it was Shinobi 3 that I played a little bit of. Okay, the last one was in 2011 on the 3DS. Yeah, I was pretty sure it hadn't been in a long time. So this is new. Yeah, it actually looks like it's not coming to Switch 2. It'll just be on Switch 1, which obviously I'm sure the eShops will carry over and stuff. I don't know if that's confirmed or not, but I'm assuming all that stuff will carry over. So you'll probably be able to buy it on Switch 2 without a problem. But it is a little interesting that they're not officially releasing it on Switch 2. But yes, it's a 2D action platformer. I would say it's actually, at least the old one is more beat 'em up y, but they're calling it an action platformer, which, whatevs. But it's Shinobi from what I played of the Genesis one, I think 3 hours or something of, not 3 hours, less than 3 hours, probably like an hour and a half, 2 hours. I played. It was a lot like Ninja Gaiden, is how I would describe it. But it felt a little more modern, because it literally was a little bit more modern than Ninja Gaiden. Just a few years, but it's a whole console generation. Like the Ninja Gaiden games were on NES, and Shinobi, the first of those, was on Genesis. So, I would say it's a evolution of a game like Ninja Gaiden. Other thing, this is like not anything too crazy. I guess it is a little crazy. Clair Obscur Expedition 33. I've talked about that game a little bit. So Clair Obscur Expedition 33. I think this was as of yesterday. I think it was as of yesterday. Maybe it was 2 days ago. But anyways, Clair Obscur Expedition 33. 33 days after it launched on Steam, sold 3.3 million copies. Which is hilarious. I think Clair Obscur Expedition 33, 33 days after launch, sold 33 million or 3.3 million copies. There's a lot of threes there. Of course, what's really neat about a game like Clair Obscur Expedition 33, especially what's so unique about its success, is that it is. I mean, they're calling it an indie game. Calling it an indie game, I don't know entirely if I agree with that, because it is by a brand new studio who technically is independent. But they do have a lot of big people from other studios. So I mean, I guess in a way they're indie, in a way they're not indie. Maybe they are indie. I guess they're indie, but it's definitely a triple A indie game, or triple I actually is a term you hear a lot. Triple I, but anyways, it's definitely it's funny to me that it sold 3.3 in 33 days, and the game has 33 in the title. But I think this is also important news just because of how crazy well Clair Obscur has been doing. And I definitely want to play this game for sure. I don't know when I'll do that. I don't know. I guess I don't know for sure that I ever will do that, but I'm guessing at some point I will. Maybe I'll play it on Switch 2 at some point. I'm pretty sure I won't get a Switch 2 on launch, but I'm hoping I'll get one in the first month or two. Um, so it's definitely going to be a little weird for a while there. I'll be talking about, you know, other people in the Switch 2, but I won't have one myself, I'm guessing. So that'll be a little strange. But oh well, I guess, you just can't. They're expensive, they're expensive. I mean, for video game consoles, they're quite cheap, but it's still technically expensive. There's also some rumors. I don't personally know a ton about where these rumors have come from, but I'm reading this article that apparently there were some rumors by Pedro Henrique Lutilipe. Apparently, he has an insider that is saying that there will be a Switch 2 Direct in June, shortly after the launch of the Switch 2. Which, I mean, personally, I'm not like too surprised. I was kind of thinking that they might push the June Direct back to July. I mean, there's nothing saying that Nintendo has to have a June Direct, right? I mean, they could just not. That is like possible. But I just kind of assumed that they probably would still do it, and that it would be delayed to like July. So it might not be delayed. They might not do it. They might do it. Who knows? Honestly, like who's to say any of this stuff? But it doesn't seem completely unreasonable that they might have something after the Switch 2 drops. I heard on the This Nintendo Life podcast, is my favorite podcast. Um, Someone on there said that potentially they would want to do it after the Switch 2 launches, but before Donkey Kong. I almost called it Donkey Kong World. Donkey Kong Bonanza launches, because oftentimes Nintendo likes to put out a direct before a big game so that they can spend a bunch of time in the direct talking about the game and advertising it and stuff, and have it be part of that marketing cycle. So they may do that. It does feel like it might be a little bit close to the launch, though, to do something like that, so I'm not entirely sure. We'll see what happens. I mean, who's to say? But it definitely, I mean, if there's a Nintendo Direct, I'll definitely be watching it. I'll definitely, well, can't say I'll definitely enjoy it. I might not, but I'll definitely be keeping an eye on that. It wouldn't surprise me at all, though, if there was a Direct shortly after the Switch 2, or even in the next few months. It could have one as late as July or August, potentially, I would say. And then, of course, there will probably also be a September Direct. I do think there will be two separate Directs, like June or July, and September, like most years. Also, bit of a weird thing. So, Fantasy Life I came out very recently. I don't actually know what day did that come out. I know Fantasy Life I was announced a couple years ago now, and I remember it being news back then. And they've talked about it a couple times since then. May 21st is when it came out, so a week ago. This game came out on Switch 1. I've heard a couple people talking about it. I don't think it's gotten like a ton of buzz. I also don't think anybody was expecting it to get a ton of buzz, but I'm sure there are people out there who do like it. What's kind of weird about this is that it's a $60 game on Switch. The Switch 2 upgrade is only $2.59. So that's been making news because, of course, the Switch 2 upgrades, most of them are going to be $20. A couple of them, I think, like Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, the upgrades were going to be $10. So it is a little strange. I mean, obviously this is third party, so this isn't like Nintendo deciding this. This is like next, or not. I was going to say next level, level 5. Level 5 are the people behind this, like the Professor Layton people, that kind of stuff. Level 5, this is all on them. This isn't like Nintendo deciding this or anything, but it is still a little strange that they would do something like that. Make it so low of a cost. But I mean, of course, I'm sure many people are happy about it. Personally, I'm probably never gonna play Fantasy Life I, so I really don't care too much. But I do think it is, intriguing that developers can have costs that are separate, to the regular upgrade path. It's not like Nintendo's come out and told everybody like you have to have them for $20, or we strongly recommend that everybody choose $20 as the path. It seems like there's going to be some variability, at least in the third party stuff, and even with the Nintendo themselves, there's going to be some variability on the upgrade packs. With a game like Breath of the Wild being a $10 upgrade pack, and a game like Jamboree being $20. It doesn't definitely seems like they're not all going to be consistent. So who knows? Maybe a game comes out, later in the year on Switch 1 and 2, and the upgrade is only $5 or $10 or 15. I mean, who knows, right? But I guess we'll just have to see when we get there. It's definitely a little bit strange and a little bit interesting that they would have an upgrade pack so cheap for a game. Also, I'm sure nobody's surprised about this, but apparently the studio behind Claire Expedition 33, Sandfall Interactive, they were interviewed by GamesIndustry.biz, and they are, in fact, making another game. They said there will be another game for sure. Francois Fuency, I don't know how to say that name. Maurice, I don't know how to say that name either. He's French. Who cares? Uh, but anyways, they are making another game, and they said that the team's experience for making the RPG will be beneficial going forward. So that's not at all surprising that they'll be making another game. I mean, you have something so wildly popular, as your first game, then of course you're going to have another game. So it's not surprising, but it's definitely exciting for anybody who enjoys Claire Expedition 33 and somebody like myself who thinks that I probably will enjoy Claire Expedition 33 when I get around to it. So I just thought I would mention that real quick. I think that's all I've got as far as news stuff. So I will now, we'll probably do another music break, and then I'll come back and talk about a game that I beat in the last week. I don't think I've said what it was, so I'll say after I get back, um, I will talk about a game that I beat. I don't know if this will go for. I think this show will probably be over an hour again, so we'll see. And we are back. Hello, everyone. So on May 22nd, the day that the last show came out, because the last show was a day late, and I'm here doing this on Wednesday, and the show should have been out by now. So this show is also going to be late. I don't know if it'll come out late in the evening or if it'll come out tomorrow or what, but obviously you guys know because you're watching it. Um, so I don't know. I've definitely been a little worse about getting the show out on time as of late, and I apologize for that. But I've had a lot of things going on. I've been busy. I've had things going on in my personal life. So things have been tough. I've also been distracted reading books and practicing music stuff. I play violin. I play clarinet. A lot of you guys know this. So I mean I know that I have a lot of excuses, but I have been worse about getting the show done. So I need to wrap it up though. We need to get moving so I can get this out today, hopefully. So on May 22nd, the day that the last show came out, I beat a video game, and I had talked about it in the last show that I was planning to play it, and I did in fact go play it that same night. It only took me about an hour to beat, so that is not quite the shortest thing I beat this year because I only spent 45 minutes on the arcade game, and I only spent another hour on TMNT Turtles in Time. And actually, I only spent an hour on Super Mario Brothers. So it's not the shortest game I beat this year, but it is, up there on that list. I beat Sheepy, a short adventure, and they weren't kidding about the short adventure because it was quite the short adventure. But Sheepy. So Sheepy is a 2D platformer. Like a lot of the games that I enjoy and a lot of the games I play, 2D platformers are probably my favorite genre, or at least one of my favorite genres. Maybe 3D platformers are actually okay. I guess if we're going broad, I would say platformers in general are probably my favorite genre. However, there are some RPGs that are some of my favorite games. There are some. I mean, what do you call a Zelda game? Like what genre? I guess it's just an adventure game, but I would say like a Zelda-like is its own kind of genre, at least in some way. So who knows? But anyways, I guess what I'm trying to get across is that 2D platformers are one of my favorite types of games. And most times that I play a 2D platformer, I enjoy it at least to some degree. Sometimes there are definitely 2D platformers that are better than others, and there have been a few that I've not liked. But generally speaking, I have some fun at least with every 2D platformer I play. And most of them I end up finishing, excuse me, because usually they're pretty short and usually they're pretty good. And I think there's always a pretty good progression, I would say, for a 2D platformer. You don't always have quite that same level of progression because I think in a lot of other categories, a lot of other genres, it can be a little bit hard to have good gameplay progression of mechanics when you learn new abilities, when you have, new things you have to do in the game. I feel like a lot of games can be a little bit worse at that. But a 2D platformer is almost inherently easier to do a lot of that stuff in. And it's not to say that, there's anything less impressive about studios that have made 2D platformers, but it definitely feels to me like almost naturally a 2D platformer is good on the progression aspects Probably just because, inherently a 2D platformer it's progressive. There's a lot of progression throughout the game. Usually, you just have more difficult platforming. You have tighter platforming. You might unlock new abilities, all that kind of stuff. I wouldn't say that Sheepy has much of a curve as far as like starting out with easy platforming and moving to difficult platforming. I would say it's all fairly easy platforming because Sheepy, unlike a lot of 2D platformers, is like a narrative focused 2D platformer rather than a mechanics focused 2D platformer. And it's not to say that the mechanics are bad in any way. The mechanics are, I think, quite well done in Sheepy, but I would say if Sheepy was a full length game, they would probably have to have something else in there as well, like some other mechanics. Like, you start out and you are very slow and you jump like a very short distance. And as you progress through the game, the second ability you unlock, I guess I should say I will be spoiling some things. I won't spoil like I mean, there's not really. It is story driven, but it's like a story without dialogue. It's a pretty light story. I don't think it's gonna like lose any impact if I talk about it. If by for whatever reason you do want to skip me talking about this, I'll leave a timestamp below. But I will talk about Sheepy, and I will probably bring up some spoilers. So you play as a sheep, obviously. I mean, that's not like anything too crazy, right? I mean, who would have thought, right? I guess this game was made by, or at least for, a YouTuber. I should actually figure out real quick. I can't remember what the name was. He's like a music focused YouTuber who uses a sheep as his name. Mr. Suicide Sheep, that's what it was. Mr. Suicide Sheep. And he had this game made. I don't think he actually made it himself. He had it made though, to basically to advertise his channel, which I think is a really interesting thing. And it's not that it hasn't happened before, but you don't tend to see that happen a ton. It's not like you usually go making a video game just to advertise something. But that is an interesting concept. And he made this game, or he was responsible behind the game. And like I said, it's a 2D platformer. It's very short. I was talking about the progression of abilities. And like I said, you start out jumping like barely at all. But then you unlock an ability that allows you to double jump. So you can, I mean, it's a pretty standard double jump. You can jump 2 times. I mean, like nothing crazy, right? So there's that ability. Then later on, you get, let's see, you get the ability to run like super fast. You can like hold down a button and you can like break through some things. You can, extend the distance that you jump. You end up getting, I think, a higher jump, and then you also, at the end of the game, you can like fly. Like I mean, okay, I shouldn't just say fly because it doesn't really explain very well what the mechanic actually is. But basically, you can like hold down a button and then you can move for only a few seconds. You can like move in a specific direction and you can kind of fly around. But then you'll quickly get out of that. And so you have to chain together. At the end, there's a couple platforming sections where you have to chain together like a run, like a sprint. You'll jump off a platform, you'll do the double jump, you'll start flying, and then you'll come out of the flight and you'll double jump again, right? So there's a lot of that kind of stuff. Some of the platforming, you'll jump onto like a hook on the wall. There are like these little hooks on the wall that you can grab onto and pull yourself up onto a gap. So a lot of the platforming, you'll have things like that. I would say a lot of the platforming is well thought out, but again, the main focus of the game is on the narrative, on the cutscenes, on that kind of stuff. And basically, the general story is you're a ship, a ship, right? You're a sheep, and you're kind of traversing underground through some sort of facility, like a power facility or a weapons facility or something. For some reason I actually don't have that good of a memory of the story, probably because I was more focused on the mechanics, and I also played it a week ago. And I'm kind of sick, and my mind's not all there, to be honest with you. So, but you go through this facility, And there's a bunch of walkie-talkies and voice recordings and clips and stuff that you can find on the ground along your journey, and that kind of clues you into a lot of the story stuff. Um, Otherwise, just like some signs you can read. There's that kind of stuff, things you can observe. So that's kind of how you get your story. Again, like I said, I didn't pay a ton of attention to the story, but I also it's been a while and I can't quite say I remember a lot of it either. So that's why I'm a little foggy on some of that stuff. But yeah, there are like six main areas. I would say, probably five, but then the end game is its own area. It feels more like five areas, but it is like technically six. In the first area, there is a boss, and in the last area, sorry, the second to last area, there's a boss. In the final area, there's not really a boss. You just kind of have to run away from an enemy. And that's another thing with this game. There's really only the one enemy. It's not like you're going around stomping on like Goombas or something. You're just going around in a pretty empty environment that's more like ambient, almost like a Metroidvania. But it's not like you have to, you know, decide. I mean, I want to say you don't decide where to go. I guess actually, in a weird way, there is actually quite a few Metroidvania elements. There's a lot of things that are like hidden, right? Like you might have to, drop down to an area you might not expect to, or you might have to go through a wall or something to get to collectibles. There are like these vinyl records. There's like five of them. I think it's one in every area, like five of them, and you can get those to get achievements on Steam and I don't know, just to say you 100%ed it or whatever. I personally got like three or four of them. I did not get them all. Yeah, I think it was like three out of five I got. So I got the first couple for sure, but I don't know. I didn't get a lot of the last ones because I just didn't find most of them. There was one section in particular. There's a mechanic in the game. I should preface with this. There's a mechanic in the game. It's an elevator. And these elevators, when you hold down, they will go up or down like a normal elevator, and they'll bring you to a new elevation. I know, right? I just explained how an elevator works. But the weird thing about some of these elevators is that the power is off. And so you might have to go find a lever somewhere to turn the power back on to use the elevator. And that's like a big trope in a lot of the platforming design is like, okay, I've come to an elevator, and now I have to go turn the power on so I can use the elevator, which I think is typically pretty well done. Um, and so there's one elevator though that takes like five switches in like the third area, or this I think it's the third area, and you're in a pretty large open section, and there's like five or six pathways you can go on. And in theory, when you go down all these pathways, there's one of the switches that activates that main elevator. And you don't have to get any of them. You can just completely run by it. There's a few different of those five areas, five pathways that will take you to the place you have to be. And there's like a point of no return before you move on to the next level, I would say. But you can, if you choose to, you can go and get all five levers and then get one of the vinyl things. So that's how these vinyl things work. They're basically, you have to do a couple extra things in a couple of the levels, and then you can get the vinyl. But you absolutely do not have to do any vinyls if you don't want to. That doesn't actually change anything. They're just there for achievements and stuff. I did not get that one with the five levers. I walked around for like a good 20 minutes or so, and I could not find the last lever. And it must have just been behind a wall or something, and I just couldn't find it. But I also just, wasn't too bothered to find it. I was like, well, I can't find it. Oh well, I'll just move on. Because, I will say it does kind of take a little while to move across that section. Or at least it feels like a while because the game's supposed to be only an hour long. So when you've spent 15 minutes in one area, you're like, uh-oh, this is taking a long time. When in actuality, it's really not that long at all. It's just one of those weird, like, it just depends on the mentality you go into it with. Because the game's supposed to be short, now all of a sudden, if you spend a little longer than you expect on an area, it suddenly feels like, the game's dragging on or something. When really, it's still very short. So I don't know, just one of those weird little things. But yes, I did not get that one. I did not get a couple of the vinyls, but I did get the first couple. And again, like I said, they don't really do anything. They're just for the sake of having gotten them. The first boss, I will say that you fight basically the same guy two different times. The first time you fight him, he's this like I think he's like a pig. I think he's a pig. I can't remember. I think he's a pig. But anyways, you basically have to just jump over his head. And I know that doesn't really sound too terribly exciting. But there are like these spikes on either side of the wall. You're in a pit, and he will run at you. And there's a little bit of warning, like he'll kind of step back, and then he'll charge forward. And when he steps back, you have to jump. He'll charge right underneath you, and he'll run into the spikes on the side of the wall. And then the gap between the spikes closes up every time you hit him. And you hit him like 3 or 4 times, and then a ladder opens up, and you can get away. Um, but he survives. You have to fight him again later in the game. And I was really surprised when I came to that first boss fight in the game because I did not realize, after having done the first level and not seeing any enemies, I just kind of assumed that there weren't enemies and the entire game was just focused on platforming. But turns out there is that one boss. There's the two bosses actually, and so that was a little bit strange. But I definitely enjoyed both of the bosses. The latter of the two, I actually had to kind of figure out like, how does this work? Like I had to really do it a few times to try to get the strategy because I had no idea what I was doing. And the second boss is a little bit different. You're using the sprinting ability where you run really quickly. You're using that and you kind of there's a platform in the middle that's raised up, and there's the two sides that are lowered. And you'll have to basically stand at one of the three corners. The pig guy will jump up in the air, he'll come down at you, and you have to run out of the way because when he slams on the ground, he creates like sort of a front of like electricity on either side. And I will say that's another thing, there's no health. If you get hit, you're dead, and you have to respawn. Usually, you respawn pretty close to where you were, so it's really good about the checkpointing and stuff. And there's no lives or none of that, so it's not really a big deal. But there were a couple times that I missed a platform, and I had to, go back a couple of jumps. It was never a problem. It was never annoying or anything. And in the boss fight, you just have to restart the boss fight. So not really a problem, but it is just for some added context. Because when he does the wave, if you get hit by his waves, you do have to restart the boss. You die. You have to retry. And I was a little confused because I just kept on moving out of his way, and there are a couple times where he'll suddenly hit the ground. If he hits one of the two sides that are lowered down, it will spawn some like electricity, and he'll kind of be on the ground for a minute. And the thing is, you can't like jump on anybody's head in this game, so I just assumed you couldn't attack him, and I just figured you had to let him fall against the ground 3 or 4 times, maybe five, and eventually he would just go down. But as it turns out, you actually have to charge at him again and like smash into him using the sprint thing once he's on the ground tired. And I did not realize that. So you have to do that like a few different times. It can actually be a little bit tricky. I would say I probably spent, you know, 10, 10 tries or so on that boss. Once I figured out what to do, it was probably only 3 or 4 tries. But those first few, I just did not know exactly how I was supposed to defeat him. I wouldn't say it was particularly difficult. I think I was just being a little stupid, but that's all right. I can be a little stupid sometimes. But yeah, it was just one of those things. After you beat the game, or after you beat the final boss, he comes back and does one of those like fake out things, almost like a King K. Rool situation in the first Donkey Kong Country game. He comes back, but you don't have to fight him this time. You think you do. It kind of seems like that, but then actually he's just attacking you as you do the last little platforming section. And basically, how the end of it works is you have to like return the abilities that you've gathered over the game back to like whatever god that gave him to you. Um, and there's like these four like altars in this like volcano that you're in. And you'll start in the middle, and you'll have to like run over using your abilities and get on top of this pillar. And the whole time, the pig guy is like chasing you down. So you have to be pretty quick about it. And once you return an ability, you can no longer use it. But now you have to get across the center back to another pillar. And so maybe you've now lost your run, right? So now you're running away from the pig, but you're pretty slow, right? Then you return the second thing, but all of a sudden now you can no longer do the flight thing. And then you have to go to the third pillar. And now all of a sudden you can't double jump. You can only single jump. And then when you try to return the fourth pillar, you now can't jump as high as you used to, and you're like super slow, super sluggish, and it's just one of those interesting things. It's not that it hasn't been done in any games before. It's been done where you lose your abilities and stuff, right? But I just thought it was an interesting way at the end there of kind of like, you've got these abilities through a very short game, and then right at the end, you kind of are reminded of how you started. Because really, at the beginning of this game, like, you move really slow and you jump hardly at all. But by the end, you're actually quite capable. You have a lot of abilities and stuff. So it was very interesting kind of losing those abilities for the last short little platforming section. And just kind of, being back to square one almost in a way, right? I thought that was kind of interesting, kind of an interesting concept. So I guess that's probably going to about do it for Sheepy, A Short Adventure. I don't think anything else has come out of this studio. I think it's just a one and done thing. But it's definitely just one of those things where, after playing this game, I mean, there's a lot of great free stuff on Steam, on Epic Games. Of course, Epic Games does their free weekly couple of games. They usually do a couple games every week. This week it was Deliver at All Costs, Sifu, and Gigapocalypse. I don't really know about those other two, but Sifu, I'm definitely excited to play. I've heard a lot of people talk about Sifu, and I was actually very surprised to see it as a free thing on Epic. I was quite happy about that. So a lot of these things I am going to definitely be playing at some point. Maybe I'll be talking about one of those next week. Who knows? I don't know. We'll have to see what happens. But speaking of next week will be the 16th episode, and it'll be the day before Switch 2 launches. And again, I don't think I'll be beginning a Switch 2, but if I do, I'll probably like post something about it on the YouTube channel or something. I'll probably talk about it a little bit if I do get a Switch 2. So we'll see. I don't think I will, but who knows? Um, but yes, the Switch 2 generation is right on top of us. The 10th generation is right on top of us, and that's definitely exciting. I mean, it's going to be crazy even without having one at launch. It's going to be really fun going around watching content and stuff revolving around the Switch 2, all that stuff. If you want to ask any questions, if you want to hear my opinions on anything, you can email the show. I did talk about this earlier, but I'll talk about it again. You can email the show at notjustnintendo@gmail.com. That is NOTJUSTNINTENDO@gmail.com. You can also comment on YouTube or on Spotify if that's where you're listening. And apparently, you can also listen on Amazon and on iHeartRadio now. I guess I could actually check now that it's been a day to see if it's on Amazon. See if the podcast ever actually went up on Amazon like it was supposed to. Yes, it is in fact on Amazon. That's very exciting. Okay, so the podcast is up on Amazon. It is up on, well, obviously on Spotify, and I believe it's up on iHeartRadio as well. So you can look up the podcast any of those places if that's where you want to go. I'm still looking into Pocket Casts and some other places, so I'll be looking into that stuff, and maybe I'll be on there pretty soon. That's the plan, but who knows? With all that said, thank you all for tuning out. Thank you all for tuning in, tuning out, whatever you want to call it, for showing up to the show. And I will see you all next week. And I guess that's all I have to say. Goodbye.